Oh, hey. What's up, neighbors? How's it going? It's been a few weeks since we've talked. But, yeah, we're here on episode 5, 6. I don't even know. We're here on an episode. And we're going to be talking about toms. Because toms are the colors of the drums. They just give it life. They give it decorations. It's kind of the ear candy of the drum set. So that's why I have my pit vipers, my pitties. I don't know why actually, but it seemed fitting for toms because they're cool and they're fun. So no better than to wear my pitties. But in all seriousness, I'm going to take these off because I can't see. It's pretty dark in here. Put my nerdy glasses back on here. All right, now we're ready for business, guys. All right, so toms. We're going to be talking about toms. Yeah, toms are a fun little thing. Usually there's 3. Sometimes there's only 2. Sometimes there's only 1. They range in various sizes, from small little Fusion 8-inch toms, which I highly do not recommend, all the way up to huge, large 18-inch war drum toms. So, and everything in between. So there's lots of variety here, lots of different colors you can choose from. Most typical you'll probably see are like 12-inch, 14-inch, and 16-inch. My favorite, if you can get it, is 13-inch, 16-inch, 18-inch. Because then they're just thunderous. Just every fill just sounds like you're going to war. It's amazing. But anyway, what we have here, you can see we have 3 drum tracks, or 3 tom tracks, and tom 1, 2, and 3. And these are 12, 14, and 16-inch toms. Pretty typical sizes. Cool. Now, let's just briefly talk about the tuning of the toms first. I like big, beefy, thick toms. I don't like the higher pitched kind of 90s or more fusion-y vibe toms, at least for this genre anyway. So that's how I tune them. I basically get them as low as the shell allows me to. Okay? So I'm loosening that head as far as I can before it starts to get weird. And you'll kind of hear, it starts to, the head starts doing weird stuff if it's too loose. So as low as you can go and still maintain a good even tone or lasting tone. That's why I kind of like the deeper, the 13, 16, and 18 if possible, because those shells allow me to get a deeper tone. It allows me to tune it a little lower before it kind of falls apart. Okay, so that's really all I have to say about the tuning of the toms. Now, let's jump right in. So these are right off the mic. I'll start with tom 1 here. Right off the mic, no processing here. This is just tom 1. Okay, pretty average drum. Okay, so literally the only thing I really do to toms is EQ. You can get into compression. I don't really mess with that too much, just because our drummers, when they hit the toms well, and I'm not usually fighting to get like every hit of the tom to be heard with like a compressor. So I usually steer away from compression. The other thing that compression does is it'll pull out bleed pretty extensively. So I try to minimize that because, again, I don't want to accentuate bleed, but I also don't want to increase bleed enough to where I have to use a gate, because, again, embrace that bleed, but don't accentuate it. So I'll just do that. I'll pull up an EQ, and I'll do my favorite stock EQ, because there's no need to be fancy, guys. I'll just stop. Okay, anyway, here's my EQ. So Okay, so a common area you'll find in toms is around 500 to 700 hertz is always a problem. That's kind of the boxy. the boxy frequency. That's what makes your toms sound like a cardboard box. So we want to get that out. We want to lessen that. So that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. Okay, cool. That already cleaned it up. So now, because I pulled a lot of that, it is body. It is kind of the body of the drum. Because I pulled that out, the smack gets a little out of control here. So I'm going to find that. And that's probably going to be around my 1 to 2K area. Spike it. Yeah, right around there. So that's 1.5. Cool. Yep. Cool. And that's kind of it. I might add a little low end. Just my subby. Great. And then just kind of the cloudiness of it. So around your 200, I'm going to pull that a little bit too. Yeah. So here's without EQ. And with EQ. Hey, how cool is that? About as cool as these pitties, which is not very cool, I've been told by my wife mostly. But you know what? I'm down with the pitties, so we're just going to wear them. But that's it. That's all I do with these toms. Just some EQ. EQ can be a magical, beautiful thing when used in a good way. Cool. So we'll move on to the next tom, tom 2, and it'll be probably a very similar type EQ. Okay, so let's dive right in. Let's just hear tom 2 without any processing. I'll solo it up here. Cool. So this tom sounds a little better out of the gate to me, okay? But I'm still going to add an EQ. So I'll pull up my stock. Okay, and similar, kind of that boxy 5 to 700 hertz area. I'll be pulling that. Yeah, kind of that area. Yeah. This tom is a little bit closer, out of the gate, like I said, so I'm not going to be pulling quite as much. What I don't want to do is don't feel like you don't need any 500 hertz because there is a lot of body and character there. But know that you're going to be pulling some of it, but just don't go nuts. Don't be like, all right, the default is I'm just going to pull 10 dB all the time, every time. Okay. Use your ears. Do you need to pull that much? A little bit in there is okay. Okay. And then that click, or not that click, but the kind of that upper mid area. Yeah, there. Pull that. And I might give this a little bit of air just to get a little bit of that smack in there. It's a little bit lower of a tom, so this gives it a little bit of clarity. And then same thing, kind of that woofy, cloudy area, 250-ish. 300, 290. And then maybe some low end. But be careful with low end, really on all the toms, especially if you tune them low by adding low end to toms, because that's going to really fight with your bass when you get that in there. So when, I'll do this now because it feels nice in the moment. But most likely once I start adding bass, I'll be like, that's just a little too much low end going on. Every time that tom hits, it's just like this huge low end subby stuff that kind of covers the bass a little too much. So might have to readdress that. But for now, feels pretty good. Yeah. Cool. Tom number 3. Let's keep moving. Moving right along, guys. Tom 3, our big boy. This is a 16-inch. And like I said, tune it all the way down until that the tone until you still have tone. Tune it as low as you can that the shell will allow. So this is no processing. Okay, and just listening to it, it might be tuned a little too low. The head sounds a little bit flabby, but I'm not mad at that altogether. Even though it's a little flabby sounding, once we pull out that 500, that flabbiness, that kind of paper, you hear the head kind of flappy, that kind of goes away, and you're left with kind of this big, loose, kind of powerful war drummy sounding tom. So let me show you here. Pull up an EQ. And right around that 500, 600, 700 area. Yeah, right there. Cool. Yep, that's good. And then same sort of deal. The stick, the thwacky kind of vibe, 1K, 2K. Definitely some air on this one because it's such a low tom. Get that definition in there. And then I'm going to do a little bit more work on the low end here. So kind of that 250, get that out of there because that's kind of cloudy. Okay, and then low end on this guy. Cool. That's really it. Initially, that's where I start. Okay, now, the next step I'm going to do is I've essentially sold these up and gotten the tone of the drum to where I think it's acceptable or a little bit more in the realm of a good sounding tom. Okay, now I'm going to solo all 3 and just listen for 2 things. I'm tonally matching the identity of each of the toms so they sound like they're the same on the same drum set, okay? There's nothing worse than having toms and like the high tom is like dead and then the low toms are like super open and they last a long time. So it's like ding, doom, doom. It sounds like 2 different toms from 2 different kits are thrown together in kind of a Frankenstein kit. So I try to match tonally. So one's not overly bright, one's not overly, subby or bassy. One doesn't sound too more boxy than the other. So I kind of tonally match the tom. So I'm going to solo these up and do that. And they're pretty close already, but let's just hear. Yeah, it's pretty good already. And then I'll pan them. So panning. If I'm working on a studio album, I usually like to pan drummer's perspective. I started as a drummer, so that feels natural to me. It doesn't really matter. It matters a little bit more in a live application. In a live situation, I'm going to pan audience perspective so that the high tom, if we're dealing with a right-handed drummer, the high tom is on the right of your stereo field, the floor tom is on your left, and the middle tom is in the middle. Okay? So it kind of looks like you're looking at a drummer, and when he does a fill, it falls across your speakers in that way. Okay? And I usually pan full wide. So my high tom, I'll do it here, is all the way to the right, middle is middle, and my floor tom is all the way to the left. Okay. I'll bring up my floor a little bit. It's a little quieter. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. So then the only other thing I'm going to do with this is add a little effect, add a little reverb, really make them like excite the room, and think war, think Braveheart, freedom, freedom. What does he say? William Wallace, you must first learn to use this before you can use this. It's kind of the same with toms. First, you learn to use your EQ before you learn to use your verb. It's kind of similar, right? But anyway, verb. I'm going to use the exact same verb that I used for my snare drum. Okay, so pull up, if you remember from last video, we have 2 snare drum verbs all the way down here. Snare verb and snare verb 2. So let's pull up snare verb 1, and I'm going to solo up the first tom one more time. Yeah, something like that. This is a brighter verb, so you get that splash in the room a little bit. And then my second snare verb, pull that up. This is a little darker, which I'm going to lay into a little bit more because it's not so obvious. It's not so like, psh, tom verb, 90s, SPX 90 verb. It's not the coolest thing, but a little bit. It does make that brighter verb will make it speak up in the mix a little bit more. Soloed, it seems a little cheesy, but in the mix, it gives that tom a little definition. So here's the darker one. Cool. Yeah, right about there. Okay? And I'm literally just going to copy these sends and their same values to the other toms. Okay? And Pro Tools, that's a good old-fashioned option click and drag. Option click and drag. Come on, Pro Tools, keep up. Come on. No? Oh, there you go. It's sluggish today. Okay. And solo them up. Now we should get nice, big, war drum sounding toms. Yeah. Oh, listen to those toms. Doesn't it just make you want to go to war? I feel like I want to go to war. Listen to these. And there you have it, folks. Toms, brought to you by Binging on Broadcast and Pity Vipers. Get yourself some Pity Vipers. Increase your coolness by, well, I can't say it on this video, but 50%. 50% cooler with Pit Vipes. But yeah, guys, this is Toms. EQ, verb. That's it. Simple as that. Now, a lot of people would add gates to toms. I'm guilty, not guilty, but I have been one to add gates on toms as well. Here's the thing, though. These toms don't have enough bleed for me to add gates, and I'm not compressing them, which will bring out the bleed and make it more of an issue. Okay. The other thing with bleed is everybody thinks that bleed is a bad thing. Okay, but bleed can actually accentuate other drums in your drum mix. So, for instance, snare. Okay, I hear the snare in the toms, right? There's a lot of snare bleed. Okay, but with the verb and the nice EQ on there, that snare hit coming from the tom mics will will excite the tom verb, or the verb I've added on the toms. Okay, so this is going to slightly enhance the snare drum sound. So when I play the snare and the toms together, I'm actually gaining a little coolness, a little pity viperness to the snare drum without even doing anything. All I did was not deal with the bleed on the toms. It's similar to like the overheads. Overheads are not just cymbal mics. They are overheads. They capture the whole drum set, including the snare. And there's a lot of clarity that is added to the snare when you bring those overheads in your drum mix. Similarly with toms. Now, obviously, bleed can be an issue if you have a cymbal that's really close to the tom mic, or the hi-hats are bleeding through that first tom mic, which is usually the case, really bad. Then yes, then you have to go through the motions of dealing with bleed. The best thing that I can think of is get it at the source. Ask your drummer to move a drum, move the mics, position the mics a little bit further. You know, when I point toms or point the mics at toms, I try to not point it at the tom so that the snare is right behind that mic. So if this is the snare, or this is the tom, and I'm hitting the mic here, and the snare is back here, well, that mic is also pointing at the snare. So move it away from that, away so the snare isn't right in the background. It'll help minimize that bleed. Okay, so move your mics, try to mitigate it at the source before you reach for plugins and processing, okay? There's a lot of cool tools in the plugin world to deal with it, but try to get it at the source. It'll make your life a lot easier in the mixing. Okay, in this situation, I don't think the bleed is an issue at all, and if anything, it kind of adds to the glue and the coolness of the drum set. Okay? All right, the last thing I'm going to talk on. If you've noticed, I haven't touched on hi-hat for good reason. Nobody likes hi-hat. Everybody loves hi-hat. Nobody likes the sound of a hi-hat, if that makes sense. People like the pocket and the groove and the subdivision a hi-hat adds, but it's hard to find a good sounding hi-hat, especially on a mic. All right? And also, hi-hats, they just get into every single mic on a drum set. I'm never in a situation where I'm like, you know what? I wish I could hear more hi-hat. I'm always in a situation where I'm like, I wish I couldn't hear this hi-hat as much. Okay? So for me, it's a waste of a channel to throw up a hi-hat mic, because even when I do have a hi-hat mic, it's like almost off pretty much all the time. Okay, so it's so low in the mix that it's like, why do I even bother? There's plenty of hi-hat in the overheads, especially when you compress it, which I'll show you in the next video when we talk about overheads. There's plenty of hi-hat to go around, so I don't need another track of hi-hat. So save yourself an input and get rid of that hi-hat. I think that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped you. Let's go to war for some toms, yeah? Freedom! I like that. You, William Wallace, you must learn to use your EQ before you use your reverb. I have a terrible accent voice. That was the worst Irish accent, I think. And I'm Irish. My last name is O'Brien, and I just can't even touch an Irish accent. So all you Irish accent people out there, I'm sorry. But with that said, this is the tom video, not an Irish accent video. Hope you enjoy. That's it for now. Star Swipe out.